At Capella University, learning the right skills could make a difference. That's why our business programs teach you relevant skills you can take from the course room to the workplace. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
You're listening to a Mint podcast brought to you by HT Smartcast.
Hello, I'm Aprajita, your Why Not Mint Money podcast host, and today I have with me Sanjay Rammoorthy. He is an ex-journalist and now an entrepreneur. He has interesting things to talk about: stock market, politics, journalism, and his own career.
Welcome to Why Not Mint Money, a personal finance podcast where we help you understand basic money concepts and share strategies for you to build your wealth. So let's get started with your money journey.
We have a lot to learn from you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I don't know how much I have to teach, but let's take this forward.
It takes a lot of courage to leave full-time job and then become an entrepreneur. And a lot of people, at least people of my age, we often consider it, and it's a difficult task altogether. So maybe you can begin with talking about your own journey, for how long you worked in journalism, where all places, the kind of beats you covered, and when did you leave your job to become an entrepreneur?
So I started in the mid-80s.
Mid-80s?
Mid-80s.
Okay. Working?
Working.
Wow. At what age?
I must have been 20, 21.
Okay.
Before that, in a small town where I grew up, I used to work for a small newspaper along with college. I was born and brought up in a city called Nagpur.
Okay.
And there was a paper there called the Nagpur Times, and we used to do the graveyard shift. In those days, pages were made on cut and paste. You had to cut and paste. There was no page maker. And so we were the graveyard shift where the guy used to say, cut 100 words out of the story so that it would fit in. So we didn't know journalism. The only thing I think we got hired is because we were reasonably okay with English. And that's all our contribution was. But I would say my first proper job was when I came to Bombay, and I started off as a journalist, as a trainee. As a trainee in a daily, you're not really only doing a particular beat. You do what you want. And somehow I got more interested towards the business side of the story. Then I became a business journalist. Wow. Spent about, not too much time, I should say, about 6 or 7 years with the print media, and then moved to television.
Okay.
Television was very interesting. Television, I'm talking about the mid-90s. Television was just opening up. Okay. We had, I used to work for a company called Plus Channel, and Plus Channel had a daily morning slot on Doordarshan 2, which was called Business Plus.
Okay.
Very, very interesting slot. We had very senior journalists who were a part. My bureau chief here was Tableen Singh. Okay. The editor was a gentleman called Sailesh Kothari, who was with ET and other people. So it was a very serious business. But it was a daily, but it was a magazine format. We would not be able to break stories. We didn't have a breaking news culture.
So they were all fixed slot.
They were packaged stories because we didn't have the kind of OB-Vans and things like that. The stories you shot here, written, they would go to an editing table, get edited. Doordarshan being Doordarshan would vet the stories. You're not saying something wrong. So there was, if you did a story today, it would probably come 2 days later. So it was a magazine. It was not that way. Then I joined a private news channel. Private news channels were just coming into the country, and they started off with having bureaus in Bombay and Delhi and probably some other cities. But that time also, you see, cost of equipment, everything was very, very high. Today you can buy a broadcast. You can actually shoot broadcast on your phone. Right. In those days, if you wanted to buy a camera, it was 25 lakhs to 30 lakhs. So the expansion in which people did was smaller. So I was sent to a southern state because I could speak Hindi and I could speak the local language there. Okay. Very, very interesting phase in my life because I learned a lot in television. Then I moved back to Bombay and,
Then what made you leave your full-time jobs in various places?
I will tell you, there were two distinct reasons. That one particular place that I was working for, and I don't want to take names, is not the best place that I was. We all make certain career mistakes. Of course, I could have left and gone to another media house, but I had already been in journalism for about 2 decades. It was, and I wanted to do something different, and I eventually wanted to start something on my own. That was always there with me. That, however small, so may not be an entrepreneur, but maybe a consultant, maybe something to do with that you can call your own. But as a journalist, I never understood the financial part of it. If you're a mid-senior journalist, you're pretty protected from the bad world of finance. You don't know how to generate money. You don't know how to sell products. You go and do your story. You come back and you get a salary at the end of the day. So
the sales pitch, the marketing side of
the
it.
marketing side, actually more than the marketing side, also the business side,
correct.
which is very important as to how do you run a business. So a very dear friend of mine who ran a pretty large PR agency said, why don't you come and join me? And I made it very clear to him that I'm coming to join him only to learn those tricks. And surely I didn't want to do what he was doing. I spent about 2 or 3 years with him. And then I decided to branch off my own and become a communication strategist. I also wanted to start a content company. This was in the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. Many people thought that I was an absolute idiot to have done that at that phase, because 2008 was one of the biggest financial meltdowns. If you remember the subprime and things were in an absolute challenging. Fortunately for me, in 2009, after the debacle of 2008, the wave had started going up. So I could ride on that wave. So I started off on my own, started off small, ensured that I had 6 months money to take care of my business, and about 3-4 months money to take care of my house.
Own expenses.
My wife was extremely sweet. She was working. So, the house fires were honestly not a big problem, but the business costs were a problem. And when you start off on your own, what you miss is not your salary.
Right.
What you miss are the perks. So if you're working for someone else and, you have to go to, you're based in Bombay and you have to come to Delhi for a meeting, you're not really worried. You call the admin and tell them, give me a ticket, and then you come back. But when you've got to pay for that on your own, then you start thinking whether it is worth it or not. Those are the decisions that make a difference when you're, you know what I'm trying to say. So, it has been a long journey even after 2009. The world has changed from 2009. There have been various disruptions in the whole business. Fortunately, I've been very lucky and fortunate that I have remained in that one industry, which is the media industry. Maybe in a different avatar. So I've never really changed my business. But yes, it has been a very, very exciting journey. And if I had to do it again, I don't think I would change much.
Correct. And now about your own investments. So since you are running your business, so you have your business investments, the money that you have to deploy there. Then you have your own expenses. So tell us about your investment journey since beginning. What was the very first investment product that you bought? And later on, how did you diversify in different other products? What do you do now?
So you're in the same boat as I am when I started. Journalism and media has not been one of the most highest paid jobs that you have. I'm not cribbing about it. A lot of people crib. I said we all went into that field with an eye open that money is important, but it is not the end all. Otherwise, we would have been doing other things.
Some other things.
So it did become difficult, and especially for someone who had to move to a metro from a smaller town, which means that one had to take care of all the other expenses along with, compared to the guy sitting next door who was born and brought up in Bombay where I started. So who didn't have to pay for things like rent and food. One had to pay for rent and food. Could you save money? Could you put aside some money? You could, but the money that you could put aside after 1 or 2 years didn't seem to be too large. So one was a little, one always said, yeah, okay, we'll keep doing it. So very honestly, for the first 2 years, probably didn't put aside many money. Then one started putting aside money, not as an investment or a saving, but probably to fuel some need at the end of the year. For example, if you had a life insurance and you know that at the end of the year you have to pay a premium of whatever money, you didn't have that money together. So so what people probably do today as SIPs, the capital markets were not matured enough. the only instruments available to people like us were debt instruments. So one, three instruments. One had a savings account, one had an FD if one could put some money. And the third, which worked very really well for me, was what is known as a recurring deposit. So
Okay.
every month you put on 100, 500, whatever. So you know that you need 3,000 rupees at the end of the year to pay your insurance bill. So you you put that money, and the end of the money you go and pay it.
Right.
And as your salary went up, you started doing that. The second thing, I was fortunate. It's my story. My grandfather was very fascinated with this whole stock market boom in the 80s. And I don't know if you remember, but in those days you could buy shares only at par. So all shares were at 10 rupees each. And when you applied for the shares, they were all usually heavily oversubscribed. So
as it happens now.
As it happens now. So my grandfather would sit and apply shares on 4 or 5 names. My name, my sister's name, my mother's name, his wife's name. And you paid 50% upfront. So we had a couple of bank accounts, which he operated. So every time I used to meet him, I used to sign 10 checks and give it to him, and he would do what he wanted. They were all in a non-demat format. They were all in the physical certificate format. And that savings, very honestly, was not there for an emergency, because liquidating that was a big process. Unlike today, if you have shares on your demat and you want to liquidate it, you and I can, as I'm talking to you, I can go to my app and do this and say sell.
Right.
And in 24 hours, I'll have the money in my account. Those times, the settlements were T7, T8, because the banking system was not as robust. Everything was not as robust. So that was my journey. And I realized, once we went to his table once, and there was a stack of certificates. Some of them had my name, some of them had my mom's name, some of them had me and my mom's names.
Joint
so
holding.
It took us some time to sort that out. But that actually gave us a certain amount of, what should I call as a capital.
So you used to give your own salary, maybe some part of your salary to him via check?
So I'll tell you very honestly, it was nothing systematic. My grandfather used to put a gun on my head whenever I used to meet him. He used to say, give me 5,000 rupees.
Okay.
Which meant that put 5,000 rupees in your account, which was not my salary.
What has happened with that money now, and the journey of your physical certificates to maybe demat?
So fortunately and unfortunately, after he passed away, we found all these. So none of us thought of it as an investment. That was the fun part of the whole thing.
Right.
So when he passed away, there was this stack of share certificates. Some made extremely good money because it was, and some were terrible enough because everybody and anybody. The stock market also, you have to understand, was not as regulated. Anybody could, just launch an IPO. There was no SEBI, there was no red herring. You could just launch an IPO, and some of them were, a 10 rupee stock was trading at 50 paisa and 40 paisa. So they were both sides of the coin that were there. And then I remember me and my mom and someone else sat down, sorted that whole thing out. Okay. And we didn't even know who had paid for what, because he was handling that whole thing. But that gave a certain amount of money, because...
So you got those certificates converted into demat, or did you redeem it?
No, we did convert it into demat. And then I remember when, one wanted to do other things like buying a house, something, one liquidated a part of it. But a lot of it helped to build that whole...
Maybe a few anecdotes if you can share, stocks of that time, and maybe something that you hold.
I think the stock that really revolutionized the Indian stock market, or brought the retail investor to the stock market, is Reliance. If you look at Reliance Khazana, I still hold some RIL stocks, which my grandfather or mother bought at 10 rupees a stock.
Wow.
I don't have to tell you what the stock costs today. So the exponential growth in some of these, ITC was one more, was one company. It was L&T.
Right. All these blue chip stocks.
And they were all sold initially at 10 rupees. So you can imagine the value even after 20 years or 15. I think these were all in the mid 80s. But the exponential growth in which, and of course they paid dividends over the years, and they were running. So the stock was virtually free, and the best was some of them split. So you suddenly had double the number of stocks.
Right, correct.
So that journey, I think we were very lucky. So you also have to understand that we did not have access to credit. So a lot of our financial planning was not for the future.
It was immediate.
It was immediate. You couldn't buy a refrigerator. If you wanted to buy a refrigerator for 5,000 rupees, you had to save 1,000 rupees a month to go and buy that refrigerator.
Right.
Credit cards were not as easy. You had to be an absolute HNI.
Right.
And to be very honest between you, I used to live in Delhi in those days. Credit card companies used to hate journalists and lawyers. They would not issue credit cards to them because they could never recover from them. So there was this myth. So, but anyway, one has always been credit averse. I remember when I bought my first car many years later on installments, my mother told me, "Arey, you've taken debt."
Yeah.
So debt was a very bad word.
Negative
आप किसी के कर्जदार हो गए. That was the mindset. May not be of mine, but a generation earlier. And that's how the whole financial journey was.
So your grandfather in a way introduced you to stock market.
Yes,
so,
he did.
So when did you start investing by your own, picking stocks by your own?
So I have not been a very large investor. So typically I do the same thing what I used to do. Whenever I have some extra money, I put them in blue chips. So I am not someone who plays in the market on a regular basis. I'm told I should. I don't. The second thing I do is very nicely is SIPs, which works beautifully for me. I'll give you an example. Last year I decided that this year I wanted to take a holiday. I wanted to go to Europe for a holiday. So I said the best thing to do is that rather than take all the money and spend it, I started 2 or 3 SIPs, which worked beautifully to pay for. So half of the trip was fueled with what I had saved in the SIP.
In last 1 year. And
in the last 1 year. And probably some part of it was fueled by putting some things on the credit card, which one paid over the next 2-3 months. So if you're systematic, and you know your expenses, and you know what you need for a rainy day.
Right.
Probably, if it's the first investment that is very difficult, because when you're making that first investment, you do not see the value of it. You feel that even if I put X amount of rupees and in 3 years it becomes Y, what is the value of it?
Right.
And we all our needs are increasing every day. So it's a question of compromising on something today for a brighter tomorrow. But I think, I guess, someone we have to continue to do that.
Correct. And maybe while you were investing, working, so many things to look at. So the way capital markets evolved all through these years and the way investment products evolved, same way your investments would have also evolved in that manner. Then a bit about that.
So like I told you earlier, we had only banks to go to.
Recurring deposits, as you mentioned.
Like you could do a recurring, if you had bulk money, you would put it in FD. If you had, if you wanted to save for something, and then you had one salary account.
Mutual funds were also there, but not that popular.
Mutual funds were not there. Mutual funds have been actually there from probably the early 60s, if I am right. And but the stock market also came with a lot of baggage. There wasn't the kind of financial literacy. I think the first mutual fund was UTI, Unit 64. Ran it into its own controversy. People lost a lot of money. So people were very wary about the capital markets at that point of time. I mean, IPO tak theek tha, but putting your money here and there. What happened with the maturity of capital markets, with disruptions like online trading? Earlier you wanted to buy in the secondary market, you went to a sub-broker, who went to a broker, who went to a jobber, and aapko pata nahi aapko kis bhav mein milega. When you wanted to sell it, also the process was very lengthy. I think the evolution of the market in terms of online trading, BSE was the first. There were many smaller stock exchanges. Calcutta was a very big stock exchange which used to play. A lot of people used to play the Bombay and the Calcutta arbitrage. Ki kahin yahan kam ho, wahan ho. Delhi was a very big stock exchange. I think that building in Daryaganj still stands. Those stock markets used to play. So people were... So secondary stock market, I'm not talking about the IPO, was a game for a very mature investor. With very deep pockets, seasoned, and who spent a lot of time and effort. You see, also your prices could be seen only once every 24 hours in the Economic Times the next day.
Right.
You didn't have television channels tracking it and showing you tickers
All the time.
as to how a particular share is moving. You could only open the ET the next day morning, and probably only the business pages covered the indexes. Your regular newspapers did not cover the indexes.
Right.
You had to go to a business paper. So you required a lot of maturity. The internet, the online trading gave birth to various financial products. Insurance was never looked at as an investment product. It was something, life insurance. What happens when you leave something for your family when you're not there?
Correct.
Today, people are doing insurance for even as
Savings.
an investment project. No, there is a safety and an insurance angle.
But people
are
buy
using
it
it
that
even
angle.
as an investment tool. Mutual funds, like I said, and the variety in the mutual funds. Like, you have so many indexes, you have so many specialized funds, you have so many. Depending on how, today, as a portfolio manager, you can decide, I'm nearing 60, so I will be a little more risk averse. So I will probably go with the top end of the market because it's as risk. But if I were younger, or my son probably would take a little more initiative and do a startup fund, because even if he can, if he loses, he can afford. He has the shock absorbers to take that particular thing. SIP has become fantastic, and I think it's something that you can do as little as 500 rupees a month. And you don't spend time at all. All you do is to give a standing instructions, and every month it keeps getting debited. You don't even realize, even if you do 5,000 rupees, 5 to 10,000 rupees a month, at the end of 3 years, you suddenly see that you have a nice little kitty. You take that and buy probably 10 blue chip stocks. So the maturity of the financial markets, of course, it has come with its ups and its downs, and people have. So the people who've lost money there also are people who become very avaricious and greedy. I don't think a guy who's systematically sensible in walking in returns. I remember in association with BSC many years back, we did for the channel that I used to work for, we did an 52 episode investor awareness program, which actually talked about people, even as a financial journalist, I don't know, if, relatives come and ask you, hey, tip do mujhe.
You are in the system, you would know.
System mein ho, give me a tip. Tips don't work, tips don't work. Be sensible, understand your financial needs, understand what you can put aside comfortably with a little bit of discomfort. Whenever you put aside something, there will be a little bit of discomfort. You are compromising on probably that one 5-star meal or that one thing that you want to do, or whatever it is that you do. But I think it's very important to systematically plan. I'm not saying stop living your life, live your life.
These things are important.
But these things are important, and that's the way I think you should.
And maybe your advice for young professionals who would want to become an entrepreneur. So how do they plan their finances? As you mentioned that you had gone to your friend and learned the tricks of the trade, how business happens. So some couple of tips
problem, the way I look at it, and I'm going to share my experience. Kids today are far brighter and far smarter than I am. They handle technology, they handle things better. I think they think far ahead. So when you start something, or when you want to start something, you are an expert in that particular field, but you're still an expert in one part of the field. Whether you're in media, or whether you're manufacturing a cup or a nail or whatever, you know one part of the business very well. But I think it is very important that you work with a smaller organization somewhere. You learn the art of running a business. The second, my tip is that every business has its own time that it moves to become profitable or starts giving you money. Mine is that you create an Excel sheet, a very simple Excel sheet, and set short-term targets. Your target may not be that I will make 10 lakhs in 3 months. But are you moving towards making 10,000 rupees in 3 months? You would have spent 5 lakhs to start the business. But unless you're able to meet those targets, Because suddenly you will find that you are given yourself 3 years, and in the end of 3 years, you will feel, yeah, I just need 3 months more. Ab aa raha hai. The horizon.
Right.
Be careful of that. Set yourself short term. And if you've not reached that target, even if it is a very small amount, sit down, take a step back, analyze why you didn't reach it. Because if your projections for the first 3 months of that small money are wrong, then probably your whole business plan, there is a problem with it. Seek advice, seek counsel, ask
Right.
people, be dogged about it, but don't be a fool. If a thing is not working, it is not meant to work.
True.
There is no point in flogging a dead horse again and
Accept
again and again.
mistakes and move on.
Accept mistake, reinvent yourself. There are certain black swan events which you can't, like I said, 2008, COVID. I know 2-3 friends of mine who started their business in December of 2019.
Then
They
what to
were
do?
wiped out, but that is no fault of theirs. So they had to recalibrate and start in a different way in 2021 or 2022, whenever. But those are black swan events.
Right.
But even otherwise, the market is changing in a very dramatic way. The way we consume services. So you have to anticipate whether the service or product that you are offering is, how long is the shelf life? How long is its relevance?
True.
Newspapers are going out of business. I've come to Delhi, I live with my son, and he doesn't buy a single newspaper.
Yeah.
But he consumes news. So probably as a newsman, I will have to understand how do I cater to that market.
Correct.
So
yeah.
it's very important.
People read e-paper, but they don't buy the physical paper.
True. But as a newspaper house, that's an absolutely different business model. I'm just using it as an example. But a lot of these services are changing.
True. Correct.
So my advice would be, keep looking at it, keep recalibrating, set yourself small targets. If you've achieved them, very good, you probably are on the right path. If you've not, analyze why you've not and make the course correction before it is too late.
Yeah, and at the same time, before you start up, you have to have some backing, some safety net with you.
You need
Without
to create
that,
a
you cannot
safety
move
net.
on.
You can make your projections. You can say, I just need to be alive for 3 months, and then after that, money will start coming in. It may happen, it may not happen. You need to insulate your business costs, because if you don't have the cost to run your business, you will not be able to go out really and give yourself home. If you are sitting in your office and you have a problem ki agla dal chawal kahan se aayega, you still have a problem. So you need to be very clear how the house fires are going to be burning, how those expenses are going to be taken care of, A. B, how your business expenses are going to be taken care of.
Both things.
Both are equally critical, because as an entrepreneur, you need to have a very clear mind, especially when you are starting something on your own.
Right. And lastly, any notable event of your professional life that really made a difference, and maybe something in your entrepreneurship journey, something that changed the course of your profession?
Well, what I'd like to say is that the biggest bane that an entrepreneur faces is self-doubt. So when I started off in the beginning of 2009, and I said I'd given myself 6 months, and I had offers from other people. I could have gone and worked for someone else and lived happily ever after. And I had said that, I would, like I said, I had set some things that I will happen. I remember for the first 6 months, we had virtually zero revenue. And so one started questioning oneself and said, am I doing the right thing? Is this the way to go? Because forget the revenue that was to come in. The salary that I was drawing in the earlier for 6 months would have been a good amount of money for me. I almost gave up, and then some friends and family said, if you've taken the plunge, you've taken the plunge. Don't give up. I think that cusp between me
giving up
or approaching people and saying, hey boss, I'm back in the market, can you find something for me? And stopping myself from doing that from probably the middle or end of 2009 to 2024. And I am so glad that I didn't do it. And, from 10, 11, things really started doing up. And I'm glad I made that decision.
Right.
I'm glad I even in my business, I've reinvented myself.
Different
The,
ways.
the kind of services one offers is very different today. But overall, I think that was a turn. That would have been a huge turning moment. Sure, I would have gone and started working for someone else, and in a couple of years or months or whatever, I would have retired. But I'm glad I didn't do that. But I would look that as a huge turning point in my life.
That the moment of disappointment, and then not
Yes.
really giving up.
Yes,
And
not really giving up. And take this opportunity also to thank a lot of people who supported the decision, not only in words, but who stood behind and worked. And I think that's a great wealth to have. If you ask me
Great.
if you ask me what did I earn, that's
this is
something
the
that I
wealth
did
that you
earn.
have earned. Thank you so much for coming here today, joining us today, and really great speaking to you, and all the best for your
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you liked the episode today. I am available on X by my handle Apri_Sharma, and you can also look for my name on LinkedIn, which is Aprajita Sharma, and you will be able to find my profile. For more such interesting podcasts, keep tuning into stsmartcast.com. Thank you.
To stay updated on this podcast, follow us at HT Smartcast on all the major social media platforms. To listen to more such podcasts, log on to www.htsmartcast.com.
Is it time to reimagine your future? The right business skills may make a difference in your career. At Capella University, we offer a relevant education that's designed to focus on what you need to know in the business world. We'll teach professional skills to help you pursue your goals, like business management, strategic planning, and effective communication. And you can apply these skills right away. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.